Okay, we're back talking about the family life cycle from Carter and McGoldrick. Single adult leaving home, key principles to accept responsibility for yourself. Second order change required for the family when we have a single adult leaving home is this notion of differentiation, being able to separate yourself in a healthy way from other people. People use the term differentiation for several different things here and there, but we're talking about here being able to separate yourself in a healthy way from your parents and from your family of origin. The possibility of developing intimate peer relationships, work, financial independence, all of those sorts of things that we do when we're young adults and we venture out on our own. Second stage, marriage, a new couple. Of course, not everybody gets married, and some people don't get married very quickly, and on in terms of options. But if we talk about a young couple that goes out and then they get married, the key principles that Carter and McGoldrick say we have to think about there are commitment to the new system and separation from the old. Everybody knows, if you've been married, and even if you've just heard about it, that sometimes it's difficult separating from your family of origin and becoming a part of a new family as a couple. For some people it's very easy, but for a lot of people there's difficulties there. That's a big thing to happen. Second order changes required is that you have to form a bond with this new person. You have to realign all of your relationships now to include your spouse. When you go home for Thanksgiving, you have to bring your new husband or your new wife with you. Your family of origin has to realign in order to accept that person and take them in. You and your new spouse have to figure out how to have rules that allow for the in-laws to be there. So you've got lots of different second order changes that happen when you create a couple. You create a new nuclear family. You have to figure out how to embrace the rest of those folks. Third stage, families with young children. Key principle there is accepting new people into your house. And you have a new baby, you have a new person there. And that new person, as tiny as they are, is going to change everything, of course. And so you have to make some adjustments to that. The second order changes that happen there, adjusting to make room for kids. Sometimes it's not just the first kid. I had a friend of mine that told me one time, he said 3 kids is about 5 more than 2 kids, because a lot of stuff is built for 2 kids, 2 parents, 2 kids. If you have 3, then you may have to move to a different place, get a different car, do lots of different stuff. So it's not just the first kid that makes this happen. You always have to make room for kids, both psychologically and physically sometimes. Parenting, learning how to be a parent, it's the hardest job in the world. You don't know how to do it until you're through with it, and then all of a sudden you're an expert. You're like me, you've raised kids, they're grown up, you know everything there is to know about raising kids. It's too late. That's the way that works. But we do our best, and every one of us has kids, and we just have to do our best, because that has kids has to just do our best, because you just don't know what you're doing until you've done it. And so that's why sometimes we feel so much more comfortable with the third one than we do with the first one, because once you've done it, then you feel completely different about it. That first one, you just feel sometimes like a complete idiot. You don't have any idea what you're doing. And it doesn't matter if you read books or read everything you can online or whatever, it's still going to be hard. So learning how to be a parent is a big deal here. And that requires lots of second order changes, lots of rule changes. It also includes realigning to include grandparents. Grandparents want to be with the kid. They want to see him or her. They want to have the holidays with you, all of that sort of thing. It requires some changing. Grandparents who may not have cared so much about whether you visited them while you were just a couple, now that you have their grandchild, they're going to be kind of irritated sometimes if you don't bring that kid to see them a lot. So you have to make allowances, not just for the new baby, but for all the people that come with that. Next stage, families with adolescents. As these kids grow and they get a little older, we see all of those things that happen when we have teenagers in our house or pre-teenagers that seem really disruptive on one hand, and sometimes people complain about them. they're not always bad. Sometimes they're really, really good. Sometimes these are terribly fun years for people. When you have adolescents going into your house, you have to develop flexibility. Flexible families don't handle teenagers very well. And teenagers don't live in inflexible families very well. So flexibility is an important thing. I've told people in therapy lots of times, flexibility is almost always equated with healthy. Inflexibility almost always shows up in situations that are unhealthy. So flexibility really becomes key when you have teenagers growing up in your family. Second order changes that happen there, you have to permit some movement in and out of the family. And that happens even when they're 12 and 13 or 14. They start to go places and do things they haven't done before. They go to youth camp at church or something. They spend a longer time away from home than they ever have before sometimes. They go out with friends and do things in the evenings that they didn't do when they were 8 years old. Now they're 13, they go to a party at somebody's house. Even if it's just, a picnic and it's from 5 to 7 in the evening, that's different. And as they get older, there's more and more of that, of course. So you have to allow for that kid to move in and out of the family a little bit. And a lot of families don't like that, and they don't handle that well. You have to change the rules so that that kid can move in and out, even to the point that when they're 18 years old or so, they can go get in their car and say, I'll be home later, and drive off. And you don't know where exactly they are, maybe. And you don't know exactly maybe when they're coming home. And so you have to deal with the fact that they go in and out, even just of the physical house that you live in. That's hard to deal with sometimes. When my kids were older teenagers, as much as I tried to go to sleep when they were out at night, I would hear them come in every time they came in the back door. And it didn't matter if it was 12 or 12:30 or if it was later than that. For some reason, I heard them, and I didn't sleep until they were home. And so you have to figure out how to make those rule changes to deal with that. At the same time you're dealing with teenagers, you may be in the place where you begin to have to care for your aging parents. And this is where we see the beginning of this thing that's called the sandwich generation a lot of times, which is that group of people who have people on one end of their life that they have to care for and people on the other end of their life that they have to care for. And that sometimes creates a tremendous amount of stress. Sometimes it's really happy and pleasant. If you have healthy parents and they are involved with your teenagers' lives, and you can have that multi-generational relationship that's happy and healthy, then that's really cool. But you may have parents that are terribly sick or disabled or whatever, and sometimes at the same time you're trying to deal with a 16 or 17-year-old, you're trying to deal with a 67-year-old who's having problems, and it makes it a difficult time for a lot of people. As our children get a little older and we begin to do what's called launching now, pushing them out of our home, there are several different things that have to happen there. Key principles: accepting multiple exits and entries. The easiest way to think about this is what happens when somebody goes to college. They leave for 12 or 15 weeks, and then they want to come home. And when they come home, you have to accept them into your house. If a kid comes home from college that first Christmas and mom has turned your bedroom into an office and you don't have a bed in there anymore, that's kind of scary and disruptive for an 18-year-old. But it also may be kind of scary and dysfunctional if you leave that room exactly the same and you just sit and you can't wait for them to come back and sleep in that bed again at Christmas. So there's lots of places in there where we have to find balance and find a healthy alternative. But it's not uncommon at all for people to struggle with that. A kid who's been away at college for 12 or 15 weeks has been doing anything and everything they want to do, staying out late at night, getting up and going to sleep whenever they want to, eating whatever they want to. All of a sudden they're home on December the 10th and their parents expect them to follow all these rules that they haven't been following for 3 months. We have to have second order changes there, renegotiate things with your children. You have to sometimes renegotiate the marriage. Hey, it's just me and you sitting here. How are we going to handle this? Do we have anything to say to each other? How are we going to create something happy when we haven't even talked to each other for the last 15 years because all we've done is deal with our children? All kinds of things happen in there. We may even have to deal with the death of our parents in this time period. And again, that's tough. You got stress and loss on the young end of your family system, and you got stress and loss on the older end of your family system. It puts people in that middle generation sometimes in a really difficult spot. As families move into later life, the key principle there is a shift in generational roles. Those people that were the matriarch and patriarch of the family may become very dependent. And that power and control and providing for shifts completely to that middle generation, and sometimes even to the younger generation. You have aging parents that become dependent, and you have to deal with them, and you have to take care of them, and they may need to move in with you or move close to you. You may have to cook for them. You may have to provide transportation for them, and all of those sorts of things. A real shift in roles from generation to generation. You have to, and if you're a couple, it's really difficult to try to maintain couple function when that happens, and that can include physical relationships, sexual relationship, but it's beyond that, of course. Simple touch and affection and attention. If someone's disabled or someone has significant physical problems or something like Alzheimer's, it's very difficult to maintain that sense of being a couple, but it's one of those things that couples really miss and really need to try to figure out how to do. Is even though you're in this state, I'm still your husband or I'm still your wife. How do we maintain that? How do we keep that healthy and maybe even relatively happy in the face of all of the stuff that we're having to deal with? Okay, so that's a decent look there at Carter and McGoldrick's family life cycle. Now, I want us to look really quickly at this diagram that shows us vertical and horizontal stressors. Again, this is a thing that I think could just be a decent tool for you to kind of just allow you to think about people when you're dealing with them. If you're a therapist and someone comes and sits in your office, this is a thing that I think is helpful to think, okay, what are the vertical and horizontal things that are happening in their life right now? And we'll talk about this and be able to kind of see what that is. So we'll come back in a minute and do that.